So now that we have talked about your average day-to-day D&D combat, it is now time to take it up a notch and really challenge our players with a boss enemy. And if you haven't watched my last video on utilizing combat encounters, I would go do that now because this is going to directly build off of that video. And we are going to be talking about how things change when we go from regular combat to a boss encounter in Dungeons & Dragons. Specifically with when and where to have boss combat and how to make boss combat feel special when you are comparing it to normal combat. So unlike regular combat encounters in D&D, a boss combat encounter comes once every couple sessions and depends purely on the tenacity of your players. Boss enemies in D&D can be anyone or anything from a goblin to an ancient dragon, but they should be people who hold great power in the world, or people that hold great power from your players. And this power could be political, magical, or monetary. It doesn't matter as long as it is a significant power. Often your bosses should be faction leaders, the last enemy that has been built up to as your party has taken on the rest of the boss's kind. So only allow your players to take on this boss enemy when it has been earned in some way, whether that be delving through a sprawling dungeon or taking out the boss's top guys to find their location. The party should have to go through some intense effort in order to reach this boss, and their resources should be drained by the time they make it to him. And almost always a boss should only ever fight the party on their own terms. These NPCs are some of the most powerful in the world and would have gotten there by being smart and resourceful. So unless the party outsmarts or majorly outplays the boss, these fights should happen where the boss wants them to happen. And in that case, the fight's arena should exemplify the boss, heightening their strengths and showcasing the boss's defining characteristics. A master assassin would often want to fight in a dark room full of different obstacles and traps designed to protect them, and a spider lord would only ever take on the party in its web, full of its minions, primed as a perfect killing ground for this monstrosity. Boss fight arenas, like normal encounters, need to be interesting and have many layers to them that turn the fight into a sort of puzzle that challenges the party. But unlike regular encounters, like I've alluded to previously, these fights must happen in areas that are designed to make the boss stronger and the party weaker. And these fights need to happen when the party is at a weakened state, or at least after they have taken upon multiple challenges to reach this fight. This fight will come at the end of their adventure that could have lasted multiple sessions. The fight needs to feel earned, and the fight needs to feel climactic and memorable to be a proper boss fight. In order to make these boss fights meaningful, they need to do a number of things, but most importantly, they need to challenge your party and also either reward your party for their success or punish them for their failure. For a boss fight to challenge the party, you need to do more than give them a few more hit points and a higher damage output. Boss fights should include an extra layer to the combat above what you find in a normal combat encounter. Now, this can be things like completing a side objective that allows you to damage the boss, or dealing with debuffs that the boss doles out throughout the fight. But it can also mean simple things like attacking a certain part of the boss to do damage, or dealing a certain type of damage in order to be effective against the boss. And a simple boss could use one or two of these added layers, but for a more complex boss, I wouldn't add any more than 3 or 4 to avoid turning the combat into just another actual puzzle. With too many added layers, your players will be too busy trying to figure out how to win, and it will take them out of the game and their characters. It is also very important to avoid making these extra challenges too obscure, or dropping these challenges onto the party right when they hit the boss. Be sure to set up these challenges through combat encounters leading up to the boss fight. Have the boss's minions use similar tactics and have the same resistances to clue your party into what tools might be most effective. And be sure to give the party time to adjust to these effects. If a boss is going to have a timed aspect to their fight in which the party must move quickly across the arena, and the boss also has resistance to electrical damage, have a fight with its minions a few sessions prior where the wizard's favorite spell, Lightning Bolt, does next to nothing. And as the players delve into the dungeon of this boss, put traps and puzzles in the dungeon that emphasize quick movements across great distances in a timely manner. You need to set these things up through previous encounters, whether they be puzzles or combat like I said, and then you must give your players ample time to adjust their strategies before facing the boss. Players often cannot just switch out spells or get new weapons on the fly, so allow opportunities for them to readjust their strategies and maybe even leave and come back more prepared. This will properly challenge the players, but it will also be a fair challenge that rewards the players for playing smart. But speaking of challenge, what sets boss combats apart from others is the threat that these encounters impose. And this threat is more often than not going to be the actual death of the party. Unless given reasons otherwise, a boss, unlike regular combatants, will gladly kill the party given the chance. Or if not kill the party, they will do something far worse than death to exact revenge onto a party that has wronged them so often. And this threat is what sets bosses apart. And if you followed my advice in the last video, this threat is going to intimidate your party and make your boss an enemy they won't want to mess around with, adding stakes and drama to an already exciting sequence in your Dungeons & Dragons game. And with the stakes of player death as punishment for failure against the boss encounter, it is often important to remind your players or even show them what happens when they fail. Death is never the end of a D&D story, and after the party's death, the boss will have no opposition to do what they will. So, describing the results of a player's failure as their characters fall to the floor and take their last breaths will be a sad and melancholy ending to an adventure, but it will also take your story in a bold new direction that may even be better than the last. Along with defeating the party, your boss should be given a new and greater strength in the party's defeat. And with the story continuing with new characters and new adventures, this boss will most definitely be reevaluating the mistakes they made that led to their near demise, making the next time the party faces them a new and more challenging experience, keeping the game fresh and exciting. And if your players do succeed and defeat the boss, you must do the opposite and reward them greatly, describing all of what they have earned as the boss falls to the ground and takes their last breath. Allow them to relish in their victory and congratulate each other on a well-fought battle. That is where boss fights are truly set apart from the rest, the feeling of accomplishment that should come at the end of the fight. And be sure to accompany that accomplishment with loads of loot and newly gained fame for the party. Taking out a major boss should never go unrewarded. The amount of effort the party has gone through to achieve this victory should be tenfold a normal adventuring day, which means the rewards should match the effort. Feel free to reward your party with magical new gear, loads of gold, and a level up to let their accomplishments sink into their minds. Thank you for watching yet another tips and tutorials. I am so glad everyone is enjoying my content so much, and I am happy to be making it. Like my last video, if you would like to see a sort of part 2 of this where I design a boss fight and walk through how it would play out, let me know in the comments below. And if you have any suggestions for other video topics you would like me to discuss, just put those down there too. I would love to help. Finally, if you like these videos, please consider subscribing. And if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, check out the playlist and maybe share it with some other people who you know who play D&D. Speaking of D&D, please everyone just have fun playing games with your friends.